Hello everyone, my name is Marian Guevara, and on this channel we talk about books, movies, and more. And a huge hello and a huge thank you to anyone who is clicking on this video, who is visiting the channel or revisiting. I greatly much appreciate it. And today I'll be doing a book haul, which has been a video I've been meaning to do for quite some time. These are titles that I've been, excited to try out, that I've, been putting on my TBR. And I'm happy to report that I have read the majority of them. So yeah, I do read the books that I take in, or at least I try. So let's just get started with the book haul. I'll first start off with some of the books, or 3 books here that they're actually editions or copies of books that I've already read. But as much as I'm a reader, I'm also a book collector, and I do like owning copies of books that I love. So the first one that I have is this copy of Jane Eyre. This is part of the Cranford collection, which up to now I only thought was available in Europe. But I walked into my local Books A Million and discovered that they had a couple of them. And I'm so happy because I've been eyeing this collection on Bookstagram for quite a bit. And I just really like the colors. I like the floral patterns. Some of them have like an image of a peacock as well. I think they're just a beautiful hardback edition of these classics. And Jane Eyre is one of my favorite books of all time. It's the book that not only got me into reading classics, but sort of reinvigorated my love for reading. The next 2 books are 2 editions of Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. So the first one I have here is this self-published edition. So for those who don't know, the Books of Babel were originally self-published, at least the first book and the second one. However, word of mouth got out, a lot of praise was going around, and Orbit picked up the series and then traditionally published it. So you could get Senlin Ascends and Arm of the Sphinx in this self-published edition. You could have only gotten these, I believe, on Josiah Bancroft's website and then Amazon. But yeah, here's what it looks like. It's taller and it's slimmer than the Orbit edition, the Orbit published edition. But yeah, it has the same beautiful Ian Leno illustration. It has a different font for the title, along with the spine. You got an image here on the spine as well. And you also got an image on the back too. On Mercari and eBay, there are people who are actually trying to sell this for like $100. And luckily, I was able to get mine off of Abe Books for way, way cheaper than that. So yeah, happy to own this and make this part of the collection because I just adore, I love Senlin Ascends. And then I have the German edition of Senlin Ascends. Now don't get me wrong, I love the Ian Leno illustrated covers. However, I do like to see different publishing houses sort of make their own cover art and see how they decide to interpret the story. So this one is quite different. It has a very medieval looking tower and on the cover, and then the red is just so intense. It's very hellish and apocalyptic looking. And if you've read the series, the Tower of Babel is just a horrible place. It ought to be burnt down to the ground. So I don't know, maybe the cover is quite authentic, or it fits the mood, I guess. But yeah, I really dig this. And the more I look at it, the more I dig it. So yeah. By the way, it's im term, which does not translate to Senlin Ascends. In fact, it translates into, I think, in the tower. So yeah, that's interesting. So those 3 books were just different editions of stories that I love and that I wanted to own more of. Now these 2 are actually repurchases. I did own the paperback versions of them long ago, and I found these on Bookstagram, hardcover editions, for a really great deal. And that is the first 2 books in the Leviathan Trilogy by Scott Westerfeld. And this is a World War I alternative history / steampunk. And the basic premise is that Charles Darwin in this world discovered the threads of life and basically pioneered hybridization or gene splicing, creating these combinations, these amalgamations of different beasts that can be, that serve purpose in society, whether it be commercial, military, so on and so forth. So you have countries, cultures that accept the use of these beasts in their everyday life, and they're called Darwinists. And then you have different countries, cultures that are called clankers, and they reject Darwinism because they view that this gene splicing as an affront against nature. It's an affront against God. They fear that, natural species are going to be driven to the brink of extinction, And for them, in their society, they make use of steampunk machinery. So as I mentioned, this is a World War I alternate history. So on one side, you have the British, the French, the Russians. Those are the Darwinists. So they make use of like war beasts. So, you know, they have krakens in their navy. Their airships are giant whales that fly through the sky. And then on the other side, you have the clankers. That's the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the Germany, and then the Ottoman Empire. And they make use of these giant steampunk, you know, automatons. And I also really like the fact that these include illustrations, because the series does require you to imagine a lot of strange things. So it's nice to have illustrations that kind of help you visualize what you're supposed to be seeing. And it is Keith Thompson who does the artwork for the Leviathan Trilogy. I'm only missing Goliath. So yeah, Leviathan is the first, Behemoth is the second, and Goliath is the third. So I'm looking out for the hardcover for that. I highly recommend this series. I do need to revisit it, but I really enjoyed it. Now we will move on to the rest of the books in this haul that I have read. So we have Circles of Stone, Weird Tales of Pagan Sites and Ancient Rites, and then we have Doomed Romances, Strange Tales of Uncanny Love. Now, I really enjoyed Circles of Stone. This one was like a 3.5, actually. There were some that I really enjoyed. The First Sheaf, The Turn of Sacrifice, Lachine, and The Ceremony. So we got like Algernon Blackwood in there, Arthur Machen, who I really enjoyed. There were a couple in here that I felt were a bit repetitive, but overall I thought this was, you know, I liked this collection. However, when it comes to Doomed Romances, this is probably the least cohesive collection I've read out of the British Library Tales of the Weird. I haven't read all of them, but out of the ones that I have read, yeah, this one was the least cohesive. I feel that the editor, Joanne Ella Parsons, she was trying so hard to include stories that, you know, subverted romance tropes that she ended up including tales in here that did not fit the theme. The next book is Armadale by Wilkie Collins. This is my second 5-star read of the year, and this has pretty much supplanted The Woman in White as my favorite Wilkie Collins. I think this is highly underrated. Great Victorian sensation novel. This is about two men both named Alan Armadale, and how an event in the past has certain ramifications for both of their futures, and how it's tied to this woman named Lydia Gwilt, who is my favorite character I've read of so far in this year. She's just amazing. I love the character work of her. She's such a complex, rich female character. And yeah, this is one that you definitely should check out. If you've read Wilkie Collins and you haven't gone to see, you know, or read Armadale, I highly recommend that you do so. Then we have my first 5-star read of the year, and that is Mystery and Manners by Flannery O'Connor. It is work of nonfiction, but even so, highly entertaining and very informative. These are her essays regarding fiction writing, you know, about the Southern writer, sort of Southern grotesque literature, the Catholic writer, various topics she discusses in these essays. And even if you're not a writer, I feel that, you know, you're gonna get something out of it. At least I did. And this was a type of book that I was kind of having a hard time reading, not because it was boring, not because I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it's a 5 stars. It's because that I was desperately trying to like capture and retain every single word. I've tabbed this to high heaven because there's just so much great stuff in this book. The next two that I have here are fantasy mass market paperbacks, and the first one is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This one is a 3 POV novel that centers around this city of Elantris, in which, you know, the inhabitants were kind of blessed with this magic. They were revered as gods, but then 10 years ago, you know, they were cursed. The magic disappeared, and no one knows why. Yeah, I thought this was a solid read. This is like a 3.5-star book. I definitely consider this like a gateway novel, a stepping stone, if you want to get into a bit, you know, more higher fantasy. I do have to say that I guess my favorite perspective for the plot was Prince Rowden's, because that's where you sort of learn about Elantris. You discover the mystery of Elantris and what happened to it. but Harathan is probably my favorite character because he went through the most intriguing character arc out of all three. Then we have The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. I picked this one up because it was a steampunk fantasy, which reminded me a lot of The Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. So this one is about Maya, who is a half-goblin, and his father, who is the emperor, and his 3 older brothers end up dying in an airship explosion. So he ends up being the one to ascend to the throne, and he's thrust into this political space that he is not, used to, and he has to sort of navigate those choppy waters while also trying to, slowly accept his new role as the emperor. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I really liked the character study of this, getting to know Maya and seeing him change from the beginning of the book to the end. I would not mind getting a second book where we follow Maya years later, seeing how his alliances, have developed, how he has developed, how he has grown into his role as the emperor, what trials and tribulations he has to, go through now. So yeah, I wouldn't mind a sequel to The Goblin Emperor. This one I really enjoyed. 4 stars, solid book. The next book in this haul is one that I'm currently reading, and that is Cold Moon Over Babylon by Michael McDowell. This one I've been reading before bed these past few days, and I've been really enjoying it so far. This one takes place in a small, sleepy southern town called Babylon, in which a horrific crime has occurred, and there's some paranormal vengeance that's going to be wreaked upon the perpetrator. So the next book that I have not read yet on this book haul is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is the first book in the very popular Red Rising trilogy, and you can't go anywhere on the SFF portion of Bookstagram and BookTube without coming across Pierce Brown and Red Rising. It's very popular, has a huge cult following. And yeah, this is the first book in the trilogy, and it's sci-fi, and it takes place in a world where humanity has colonized the other planets. Humanity follows a very Roman-inspired type of culture, and society is highly stratified, and I believe our main character is from the lowest rung, called the Reds, and he's trying to take revenge on the higher elements of society by sort of sneaking in and infiltrating. I thought, why don't I try the first book? A lot of people seem to love this trilogy, so I'm going to check out Red Rising, but we'll see when I'm in the mood for it. The next book I have here is one that I've been anticipating for a little while, and that is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I'm not going to lie, I picked this one up because the premise of this book reminded me a lot of The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft. Both of these are mysteries that take place in a fantasy world, but with The Hexologists, you're following a married couple duo, and then with The Tainted Cup, this is very much a female Sherlock Holmes and her magically created altered Watson. So yeah, I was very intrigued that the 2 plots sounded, at least in terms of premise, similar, and I kind of want to see how I feel about this one. And I never read anything from Bennett so far, and I thought this would be a perfect start. So yeah, that's The Tainted Cup. We have now made it to the final book in this book haul, and that is The Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe. These are the first 2 books in the Book of the New Sun tetralogy by him. And Gene Wolfe is known as sort of this sci-fi fantasy classic titan. I know that Neil Gaiman, Ursula K. Le Guin have, sung his praises. I picked this one up on the recommendation of Philip Chase, who is here on BookTube as well. This is about a man named Severin, who is a torturer. I think, yeah, he's part of a guild of torturers, but then he is sort of exiled and forced to wander because he ended up falling in love with one of the prisoners. So yeah, very intriguing. Very, very intriguing. And I also heard that Gene Wolfe was a Catholic, and that his Catholicism affected his writing or influenced it, and I kind of want to see how it might have been reflected in Shadow and Claw. So those are all the books that I accumulated in the months of January and February, and yeah, overall I've had a pretty good 2 first reading months so far, and I'm looking forward to getting to the books that I have not yet read. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books, if you enjoyed them, if you disliked them. Also, feel free to leave some recommendations down below, what types of books you think I ought to read. And without further ado, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!